Okay, so in today's video, I want to save you a bunch of time and money and show you how to turn chocolate into an amazing centerpiece for Christmas this year. No special skills, no special equipment. Let's go see how it's done. So let's break this process down into two stages. The first stage is going to be making our mousse out of a cake mix. So for this stage, you're going to need a cake mix, a mug that is microwave safe, some water, and some food coloring. Any green food coloring from the supermarket will do, and any vanilla cake mix will do. Stage 2 of this recipe is the chocolate. Now I like to use 70% cocoa. You can use whatever chocolate you prefer though. I like to make sure that I get mine in advance from the supermarket when it's on special, so start keeping an eye out now so you can get yours half price too. Some parchment paper, some sticky tape, a spatula for when we melt our chocolate, and a bowl to fill with some iced water. Now if you don't have any ice prepared, now's the time to go and pop some in the freezer. And the final stage, which is my favorite stage, decorating. Now, as you can see, I already have some opened containers here. I've used these on different projects. Just get out whatever you have in the cupboard, you can make it work. Okay, so let's get started on stage 1, which is making our mousse. Into our microwave safe mug here, I am going to put 4 tablespoons of the cake mix. And that's quite a lot, so if you're making a smaller amount, you could use 2 tablespoons, and it doesn't have to be exact either. It's slightly heaped, slightly under, it's not a problem. We're going to be looking at consistency here. I have 2 tablespoons of water, and add that in. Okay, and this is the consistency that we're looking for. Not too thick, not too runny. Now for the food coloring, I'm going to add 4 drops. Stir it through, check the coloring. If it's not quite dark enough, you can add some more, but as you can see from just those 4 drops already, that's a really vibrant Christmas green color. We're going to get that into the microwave for 30 seconds. Okay, so after removing from the microwave, we can see it's risen very well. Now you don't want to touch this just yet, it's very hot, so let's set it aside until it cools down. Okay, so while our mousse is cooling down, we need to start getting prepared for the chocolate phase. So let's put the chocolate to the side for the moment and prepare how we're going to pipe our chocolate, and that's where our parchment and sticky tape come into play. Now we're going to make some piping cones, and to do so, I've already made some rectangle shaped pieces out of parchment. Grab roughly in the middle with your finger and then spiral around to make a cone. Use a little bit of sticky tape to secure it in place. And I'll show you this in close up in a moment. And then to make it easier to keep the chocolate going down into the cone, I like to fold the ends in just to create a nice little seal to the top. So now we need to prepare ahead of melting our chocolate by getting our ice water ready to go. Now you want it to be as cold as possible before you put your chocolate on top, so fill it up with ice. Get your water level just up to the point where the ice is almost sitting on the bottom of the bowl, and then let that sit while you go and melt your chocolate. Now you can melt your chocolate by putting it in the microwave for 30-second intervals and stirring it in between, or on the stove top. Once you get that nice silky shiny finish, that's when you know your chocolate is ready to use. Okay, so my chocolate is now ready to use, and it is just beautiful. Look how shiny that is. Lovely. So we're going to get some of this into one of our piping bags. Now remember to fold the end over before you start filling it with chocolate, otherwise it's just going to run out everywhere. Okay, so now that you've got your chocolate in your piping bag, just be sure to fold the ends over so that as you're squeezing it, it doesn't make its way back out the top. And we want to build the center structure of the tree first. Nice thick line of chocolate. This will give the whole thing some stability. Okay, now we can start with our branches. Don't worry about them being even. Don't worry about whether they look symmetrical. This is a tree. None of it's going to be perfect. The idea of this chocolate design is that you can just have a bit of fun with it. I let that set on top of the ice for about 15 or 20 seconds before we move on. Now you can see how the chocolate has started to go dull. It's shiny in just a couple of little places still, which means that those parts of the chocolate are still finishing off with the setting process. So we'll give it maybe another 15-20 seconds just to be sure, and then we're going to move the chocolate. Okay, so let's rotate this to do the next lot of branches. Lift gently off the ice and then sit in a slight angle. Gently maneuver it in and let it rest. Once you get back to this center line sitting on the top here. Perfect. And rotate again. Gently maneuvering it until we get our center line sitting on the surface. Now you can see I've just had a stem break here. If this happens, it's not a trouble. You can fix it as you rotate it next time. For this next stage, we're going to need something from the freezer. So whether it is more ice with some baking paper on the top, or if you have a ice pack like this, grab that out, pop some baking paper on it, and we're going to get our tree out and get it set onto a solid base. Okay, so grab some of the leftover chocolate from making your tree and make a little dollop on top of this baking paper here. Depending on how big your tree is will depend on how big you want your dollop to be. You want it to be large enough that it's going to be able to sustain the weight of your tree. So gently, let's remove it from the ice here. As you can see, I've already had a couple of breakages. Okay. I'm just going to sit it here on some paper, on this mat for a moment, just to get some of the water that's dribbling off. Now, if you are really concerned about some of the branches that are broken off, if it's one that just really makes a critical difference to your whole tree, just put a little bit of melted chocolate on it and hold it back in place until it attaches itself again. All right, let's now move our tree onto our dollop of chocolate. Now, the idea here being is that because we've got a cold base underneath our chocolate tree here, it's going to help that base set a lot faster, and we won't be stood around here for ages holding it in place. I'm going to rest mine up against the bowl there for a moment. Now, my base that I'm freezing this on here isn't completely flat, so before this finishes setting I'm going to set it onto the bench there so it can even itself out a little bit through the weight of the tree. And then we're going to have a nice stable Christmas tree. All right, let's retrieve our moss that we made earlier. Now, I made 2 batches because I want to give this a little bit of a color contrast. So I put a little bit more green in one batch and a little less in the other. Depending on how big you make your tree, you may only want to just use 1 batch. So let's get it out and take a look. Okay, that's worked out really well. This is going to make for some excellent moss chunks. Okay, so I still have some of my leftover chocolate. Now, you don't need to use chocolate to attach your moss to the tree. You can just push pieces in there and they will sit in place, particularly if you squish them a little bit and then put them in and let them expand back out. I'm just going to use a small amount of chocolate for some of the larger pieces. All right, our moss is on. Let's get it off the parchment paper and onto our presentation plate before we go any further with our decorations. All right, so now we're going to move on to the decoration stage, which is always fun. Now, there's no requirement for you to decorate it past here. If you're happy with what you've got, leave it as is. Basically, this is all going to come down to you and how you want your tree to look. As I mentioned earlier, I have a bunch of opened sprinkles that I'm going to be using to decorate mine. Use whatever you have available. However, if you want to make the exact decorations that I'm going to use, I will be using silver and gold sparkles. I've got some little candy canes and some little stars here. And I'm going to be cutting up these sour strips to make some tinsel out of them. So let's go decorate. All right, we're done and it looks fantastic. This is going to make for an amazing centerpiece on any Christmas table or any Christmas party event. Now, the key here is that there were barely any ingredients and barely any steps. What took us the time was assembling it all and putting the decorations on it, but you can make that as elaborate or as simple as you choose it to be. So I hope this has given you some creative ideas or some centerpieces that you can make easily in your own kitchen without any special skills or special tools for this Christmas. If you'd like to see another Christmas design, follow me over here where we make some chocolate toppers for some Christmas cheesecakes. See you there.